Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
we can hear.
Thanks. We'll just go through apologies for absence. If you've got us. Meg,
Sorry, bear with me. I've had apologies on Hannah Goodchild, Services Manager, and Dominic Luca.
right, okay, thanks.
Oh, and sorry, apologies, Neil Davis also.
Right, okay, thanks. Declarations, interest, anything to declare other than those already submitted from the secretary? Right. Yeah, questions and announcements. The only thing I've got is that just ask Scott if we can have at the end of these reports and all the other, not at the end of each report, but the end of that bundle, whole thing, a glossary. Would make it a lot easier. As Sarah was saying, you know, for new people, for people external who are looking in on these and reading it, you can find it sometimes in there, if but not always, the reports have got the title and then the abbreviations after it. They don't all have. Some people love jargon and it becomes quite difficult to understand. Having a glossary would be, you only have to do it once, just keep updating it occasionally. So I don't think it's too difficult when you do that. Minutes of the previous meeting of 26th March from page 5 of your bundle, page 1, 2, 3 and 4. Comments? No. Standing actions, none. Moving on then to review of the committee's terms of reference. We talked about this in the pre-meeting, so we've all had a good chew at it. Is anyone else wants to add? I think we don't approve them. Great. Moving on then to the strategic points plan of 17.
Fantastic. That's me. Thank you very much. So this report that's been submitted to the People Committee is for decision. So I'll take you through the key points here. As a public sector organisation based in Wales, we have duties to have a strategic equality plan which sets out our objectives for a set period regarding achievement and the progress that we aim to make in that set period. And so our current strategic equality plan is active, is running 2023 to 2026. And it's been identified that we have some outdated information in there. And the forward is still from a previous chief fire officer. There's information, for example, about our governance structure being a South Wales Fire Authority. So there's out-of-date information within that. So now we've updated that now. We have made the strategic equality plan fit for the service as it is today. And so we're not changing the period of the report. It's still 2023 to 2026. But we want to republish the report with that updated context in front. So I'll just take you through, if that's okay, some of the changes that we have made to that plan. So the first one, like I mentioned there, is the creation and inclusion of that new forward by the Chief Fire Officer. It outlines the Chief's vision for our strategic equality plan. We have replaced the information regarding the South Wales Fire Authority with now information about the role of the commissioners and that governance framework. Given that the vision, mission and values work has been completed and launched now, we've updated that to reflect those updated vision, mission and values. So that has a page in the new strategic equality plan. And we've also popped a paragraph in there around how our equality objectives outlined in that strategic plan have been aligned to the Morris Report recommendations. So to ensure that when we achieve things on a DICE agenda, how that feeds into the Morris Report recommendation so that we're not duplicating, so we have a coherent strategy when it comes to all of our recommendations in the DICE area. Also then, at the end of the strategic equality plan, we provide information on the demographic makeup of our workforce, and we compare that to our census information, with the most recent in 2021. We've updated that, given that we've made progress in that area. We have more information now than we did when we initially published the strategic equality plan. We've updated that to reflect that we now know more information, so why not publish that so that our communities can see how much we represent them. So To clarify, the objectives that are contained within the plan are going to remain operational. They are due for a new, the process of writing a new strategic quality plan will kick off soon, because we'll need to publish one in 2026. So we're not breaking that cycle. This strategic quality plan will run until 2026. And then, but when we'll work now to start thinking about new ones, but we didn't want to break that because it wouldn't necessarily make sense to break that now if we're going to write a new one in the next year anyway. So those are the proposed changes that we're looking for decision today. The only other thing, part of my report, is wanted to reassure really and give some examples of achievement that we have made against our strategic quality plan. So against those objectives that are outlined in the plan, I want to give a few examples of the work that has been undertaken in the period to reassure that we are achieving in this area. So our first objective within the strategic quality plan is to ensure that our underrepresented groups are involved at the forefront of all design and delivery, ensuring there is equity of access. So examples like the relaunch of our inclusive networks, that's the Inclusive Workforce Group, new Diversity Partnership Network, and the creation of a new DICE Champions Network. That has ensured that those underrepresented groups, those perhaps harder to hear voices, are considered, and feedback is gotten from those groups. Changes when it comes to our governance structure, so that our independent advisory group and the Culture and Connections Board, so that strategic level, underrepresented voices hopefully as well will continue to improve that coming soon. Our second objective, which is around infrastructure and ensuring that enables us to meet the demands for all our underrepresented groups. And so work that's been done on our quality impact assessment process, and about our facilities refurbishments and making inclusive changes there. I think that's examples of evidence that we are working towards that objective as well. Our third objective, which falls under our culture, is about embedding that culture of equality and diversity across the service. So things such as training packages that are being created, a key one being taking care of behaviour, which is picking up pace on its rollout, ensures that we are embedding that culture around the service, and we're continuing to work on that area. We also, our fourth objective then is ensuring all are leading by example. And when it comes to EDI, so induction training, we never used to go into inductions for anyone other than new starters. So we're now at every level of induction. So when someone is promoted into a higher role or a new position, they have a re-induction when it comes to equality and diversity, just to ensure that they are refamiliarised with their responsibilities and how they should be leading by example. With a new leadership role, we're almost saying, in that new leadership role, we're expecting you really have to lead from the front. Everyone should be leading, of course, but in that more senior role, we expect to be leading from the front on there. So small changes like that are ensuring that we are getting a message to everyone, particularly our leaders, that they have responsibilities to set the right example. So our fifth objective, and our penultimate one, is to increase the diversity of our workforce across the service. It's about key work that's been done there, as I've mentioned previously, is improving the way we capture that information. So we still know that we have a lot of missing information on that. So there is, I'm sure, hidden diversity within the service. So by improving the way that we capture that information, we're ensuring that we are starting to improve that. And my report shows that there is an average of 10% increase since the publish of the strategic quality plan on the amount of information that we hold. And so that is, the first step, to truly assess the diversity of our workforce. We need to know who our workforce are. So that 10% increase shows that we are starting to understand who our workforce are. Then we can fully assess what more we need to do to increase that diversity. But there is work occurring there within the recruitment team and the wider people services team. And, around improvements around interview panel training to ensure that we're asking the right questions. And there is activity going on there. So we're not just waiting to have the data, we're still doing work, but those two go hand in hand. And our final objective is to ensure that the infrastructure when it comes to policies and procedures and work for all of our people and for our underrepresented groups. Also, so the introduction of agile working and the increase of maternity leave provision and other family-friendly procedures that are being looked at, and a menopause procedure has been introduced within this period of this active strategic quality plan. So I think, they're not limited. There's other work going on in all of those areas, but I think those are some examples of the work that is being done in these areas to reassure that we are making good progress against the objectives that we outlined. So I just wanted to mention those. So that is all for me regarding the updates that we've made and the progress we've made. I invite any questions, any clarity I can provide. Thank you very much.
Comments, questions, anyone? Just down to me to kick the tires then, is it? Right, so, thank you for all the work you've done. And I think one of the things I said you weren't here, so the last one is that these reports, generally, they're good news stories. What we want, if we're doing scrutiny, we need a balanced picture. What is working and what isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, we talk about 10% increase it's 10% from a very low base. So, the issue is when it comes to recruitment, we're around saying diversity, particularly saying communities, we're nowhere. So I think we need to have a balance, and that applies to all the reports that come in. We need to understand if we're going to scrutinise, we can't just scrutinise good news stories. We need to know where the gaps are. On the report, I'm glad that what I like about it is that we will do this, and then we'll know when we've done this by such and such. I think that's good, because how do we performance manage this thing? So I mean, you've got all these maybe 50 or 60 lines of work, and then we've got 50 or 60 lines of knowing when it's done. Is that in a grid? Is that on a spreadsheet? How will we know when we're there?
So the reporting procedure, so every year we produce an annual review, which gets published to the communities on how we've done in that year against those things. So that is, we use a grid, and that goes out to around the service and looking for from different departments on how they have done, how we've achieved, because obviously all of this doesn't just sit in one department. So we're looking for feedback from our subject matter experts in those areas. And so that comes in 3 months before the deadline. Say, right, what are the the good news stories, but where have been the challenges, and we assess that and then publish it to the communities.
Right, but that's just a review. That's not performance managing it. So during the year, we want to understand. After 6 months, we want to know: are we 50% on track? Are we, is this? So to me, there are a number of ways of looking at performance charts. One will be a linear line. So you've got 100 things to do in 10 months. You do 10 every month. It's a straightforward line. Some will be a hockey stick, but very slow progress at the start, but it's all going to come in at the end of the year. Some will be really front loaded, and it will tail off, and a mixture of all of that. So rather than waiting to the end of the year to see how we did, how do we know what we're doing during it, so that if at 3 months we can say, actually, we're off track on our projections, we need to put more resource into this or less resource into that. How do we know?
Sure.
If you may, so we've I touched on it in the recruitment report. So in the people services restructure, we implemented a business partnering model, which has got 8 specialists, and they've all got KPI dashboards, which we've introduced from April. So there will be a quarterly report for each specialism, which tracks it, but within the directorate, we're tracking it monthly. So we've got a monthly control internally, and then quarterly producing across the service. So we're in our very early stages of developing that, working with Adam and working system 6.
Good. So how do I track this? Because we've got pages of we will know. How do I?
So we will be producing that. So there's work undergoing at the moment under digital transformation around BMS and information going on that. So quarterly that will be updated service wide.
Right, including this. So when this sits under our committee, doesn't it? So we'll have a report coming to this committee. We'll say we are at such and such a position. Just, I'm then moving on to page 16. I don't know. I think my maths must be off. But on page 16, if you go to the bottom left, which is that gender, sex.
Yeah.
So it says female 319, and that's 81%. And it says male 1,358, that's 19%.
That's the wrong way around.
Right, okay.
So I'll get that changed before.
Because it's going to be just, before it's published.
Absolutely, yeah.
You might just want to do a sampling of all the others to make sure that these are accurate.
Absolutely.
Give that to the treasurer, that one, to show that I read the numbers. Right, anyone got any other comments on it? So when it comes to something, we want a balanced picture, and if things aren't working, it's okay to come and say to us, we are nowhere with this, because then we've got eyes open, and we can say, actually, we need to do something more about this, rather than it's all really rosy in the garden. Don't know how you're going to minute that, Meg, you know. We just need to have facts about good and not so good. Right. Moving on then to the annual review recruitment. Lisa, is that you?
So, this report provides an overview of the activity for the financial year 24-25. It also includes attraction, engagement and recruitment and selection activities. As we know, the year's seen significant changes in the makeup of the executive leadership team and the senior leadership team, which has required fast response to that. The fixture on permanent staff. A new permanent chief fire officer was appointed in November 2024. That process was managed by Gaten Sanderson, but we did have some internal activities to support them in that recruitment activity. In addition, we've onboarded a head of communication and engagement, which was a new post, 2 permanent assistant chief fire officers, and a permanent area manager to offer operational stability. During 2024, we saw significant changes in the services directorate. So as I mentioned earlier, we adopted a business partnering model, which introduced a team of 8 specialists, one of those being a specialist for recruitment and retention. These business partners work closely as a team to ensure that they're joined up and collaborative in their approach. So, for example, our business partner for recruitment and retention works closely with Matthew on the DICE to seek to achieve our strategic objective to diversify the workforce. In terms of our updates on practice, we introduced a number of new initiatives during the year. For example, psychometric tests, some senior level recruitment processes. We've introduced the use of LinkedIn as a platform to advertise professionally roles other than just the usual social media such as Facebook, etc. We've refreshed the recruitment adverts, the job descriptions and the specs to be more accessible, more interesting, more engaging. And we've initiated a change to our disclosure and barring service. So the provider now offers all pre-employment checks, including right to work references, which was something that was taking a considerable amount of time as part of the recruitment process. We've got a project underway to review our onboarding strategy and the experience of new employees. Moving on to outreach work, we are busy developing a strategy during Q2 of this year, but last year in particular, we attended engagement events, had career conversations, looked at scoping different recruitment websites to see which were effective, started collaborating with the media department more around the refresh of how we're attracting potential candidates. And we've started conversations with the legal team about how we might be able to support the DICE agenda, positive action, those kind of initiatives. And more recently, we've had conversations with the University of South Wales to look to develop a work experience programme. And very recently, we've linked the university in with our Future Fire think tank to graduate research projects. But again, initiating that interest at that earlier level to engage with potential candidates into the service. In terms of our engagement statistics, we've completed 12 Work Up with a Watch events, 38 events have been attended, careers events, school talks, and large scale events such as the 999 Day. And we've done further development on our volunteer programme. Our volunteer coordinator has recently relocated to operate with people services, and that's led to greater engagement opportunities across the service and externally. In terms of recruitment statistics, we've undertaken 16 operational recruitment processes or campaigns, 76 corporate and bespoke roles have been advertised, and 73 on-call recruits have been placed on initial courses through the recruitment. In terms of that gap analysis and future work and challenges, so we've got a recruitment reform project due to launch next month. And that will be looking to develop a recruitment strategy to find our recruitment processes, look to be more innovative in our approach. And again, a lot of that will be looking at not just the point at which we're recruiting, but what we do prior to that to actually engage with the potential marketplace. We recognise our employer branding needs to be stronger. So we'll be reviewing our approach and capitalising on the new values and the core code of ethics. And again, exploring different social media channels, in particular in reference to younger demographic and underrepresented groups. During the last 6 years, we've done a lot of campaigning and increasing peer applicants, but there's a lot more work to be done. That's not been as successful as we would have hoped. And that again will be addressed under the recruitment reform project. And a significant project for the upcoming financial year is the organisational resourcing and workforce planning under the Step Forward project. The resources currently being identified to take that project forward at speed. Aside from that, then we've got the service-wide digital transformation project, which will enable a wholesale review of our systems, again, helping the recruitment process be more efficient. And also in terms of it getting credible management information from our systems so that we can actually be more proactive in our approaches. And as touched on earlier, the recruitment retention business partner is responsible for key metrics, which are being introduced from April to highlight opportunities for process improvements, as well as promoting what's working well. Some of those KPIs, for example, are held jointly with Matthew, as we discussed earlier. Community outreach, community engagement, candidate demographics, that kind of thing. So a very, very busy year. Continue to deliver recruitment practice, but we recognise there's still an awful lot of work to be done to develop further and to actively utilise management information. We've forged some build connections to allow for more engagement events and development of a more holistic engagement strategy so we can develop a work in a deeper and consistent way. So been very busy, but lots more to do.
Okay. Any comments? No? Just down to me again then. Right. So you put in here recruitment facts for page 38, something for the on-call recruits. You don't control it in the process, do you? The on-call recruits.
We're involved in it.
You're involved in it, but who owns it? Ops, isn't it?
It's a collaborative team.
Right.
It's a working team.
So does this appear in the ops report about the recruitment? Ops do their reports? Because
Check.
what I'm trying to get is, as I understand it, on-call recruitment is done on one side of the house and whole-time recruitment is on another side of the house. So if we're dealing with recruitment here, there's another part of the house responsible for a chunk of it. And so do they report in that part?
They work together collaboratively. I need to check whether it's in their reports in itself. I
Right.
think there's a collaborative working team on on-call recruitment.
Because it would be
But
the
it's
same,
consistent.
that all recruitment is through people services. I know it's not, but it.
You have resource dedicated to recruiting those people.
Yeah.
But within the
Just can't
people
explain around why different parts of the business and different parts of the house. Okay, when it comes to recruitment, have we asked 16 to 18, 16 to 20 roles, what sort of media they use to find jobs? Because
That's a project that's being done at the moment.
So it's a danger.
Our cadets as well.
yeah, but we think we know where they're going to look. I mean, I wonder how many 16, 18-year-olds look at LinkedIn. Or they go to all different social marketplaces for jobs, and if we want to get them. And I think also when it comes to, we've got all these outreach works. Did we measure the effectiveness? Did anyone from Willows High School take the next step? It's about making sure.
And that's what we've introduced. So going forward, we will be, but historically this is last year.
And I suppose it then leads into the report on training, which then shows the kinetic stuff that we do, but not the other side of the profession where we've got, I'm looking at everyone in here except me who's got a computer in front of them. And yet there's not a picture, and we've had this conversation before about the training centre. There's nothing, they spend how much of their time on learning in the classroom, learning through computers and assessments that are not on the diagram, yet every picture is rolling codes and PA and stuff, which I know is hugely important, but it's only part of the job. And if you want to advertise, because the last group, 60% graduates. So their parents, and they will be thinking, I went to university for 3 years, and am I going to use any of that at some point in the future? And there is a career path because, to become a member of the executive team, you've got to have a degree or a second degree or even more. So at what point do we we explain what the ask is of people. And if we're looking for, it'd be great if I'm sure we've got some targets somewhere, we've got cyber capability. They just don't, it doesn't rise to the top because we don't ask, because we don't look to them for that. We've got people with, well, like we had that recruit, didn't he? He did a thing on lithium batteries, university or whatever. And why would we want to? And I know we are.
No, we got good examples. So we've had an on-call recruit put his hand up and said he's got a lot of expertise in the ICT space, for example.
Yeah.
And now they've been employed as a full-time member of ICT as well as their on-call contract.
Great. I mean, we've got a lot of talent inside, but also I think it's about explaining, particularly when it comes to the uniform side, of what the ask is. It's much wider than pose and BA, which will take, in the real world, will take up 6% of their time. Admittedly, 95% risk, but still 6% of their time. They'll be doing other stuff, community engagement. When we get a community risk management plan, we want people to pull through large amounts of data and be able to interpret the data and be able to make decisions based on trawling that data. So it's having that skill set.
Is there something about capitalising on the fact that we'll develop you technically and professionally for your role, but you'll also have access to learning funds that you can apply for to develop your academic capabilities?
Yeah.
Because we probably don't put that showcase that enough. In fact, I was going to ask for a little bit of that to go into my next week's routine notice about access and development.
And
So I think you're right. You could join as a firefighter or a corporate member of staff, but actually, why not do an accountancy qualification and apply for jobs in accountancy when they come up in the fire service?
that's part of the talent management programme, and the Leadership Academy is leadership and personal development.
Yeah.
Academy.
So I think it's multifaceted. So we've got people that join with very limited qualifications who we can then provide the opportunities to get qualifications. And then we've got people who are going to join the qualifications and skills and expertise, which we need to be able to cater for. And if someone's just done a PhD at university, are they going to want to join straight as a firefighter if all we're offering them is running around the yard and getting hot and wet? Which I have to say I personally found really exciting, but it's not everyone. So it's just like thinking because if we go at this the same old way historically or just nuance it around the edges, we'll get pretty much a similar result. And I've been to a number of pass outs in the training centre, and I mean, you've seen, are they particularly diverse, say from ethnically? Yeah. They are. No, they're not. Well, no, they're not. I mean, we're nowhere. On gender, we're making improvements. LGBT, some above the line, some below the line. It's difficult to know fully. So I think there are some areas where we're not. When you look at the stats, I think the population of Cardiff is circa 8% minority, and we can't even. We've got staff groups that measure less than 0.5%. That's the smallest percentile that we go down to. They'd be even less than that if we numericalized it. So there's an awful lot to do in this space, and I think this project that you've got, we want to see and report back regularly, because this is something that we are off track of. So if we're going to performance manage this, you could see the terms of reference. If we're going to report, can we bring something on that to this committee? But the thing you were talking
In
about.
Q2, yeah.
Yeah, you understand what it's set up to do, what it's doing, what it's achieved in Q1, Q2, and then Q3 and Q4, what we expect to try and achieve. Now, and then again, the other bit would be to be comparative against, which fire service is ahead of all, or are we the best in class? Because we just need to understand where we are with this, because lots of people are looking to be more diverse in their recruitment. So we're doing this at a time when everyone else is trying it. So we've got to then make our offer that much more acute. It's competitive. Anything else? Right. Good. Okay then.
Sorry, Chair, was there an action? Was there an action there?
But it's sitting under the talent management step forward project, so I'm just mindful of creating lots of spin-off actions when it's being dealt with under the step forward programme. So
So the action would be then to review that step forward programme Q2 with a view to looking at the success or not of the new recruitment project.
That'll be in the report.
the project is launching next month, so just need to be mindful on what we can bring in terms of Q2 in success of the project, because we're not foreseeing a whole time recruitment in the immediate future. So to see its success or not is going to be longer term.
Would it be useful to know what exactly we're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so the action isn't another report, it's to identify, because this is about making sure that we've cross-referenced, so we can tick off an action here that is contained in that report. Okay, training.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, I'm conscious of what you mentioned earlier on about this being a small. Obviously, I'm deputising for Neil today, so I'll go off the report that he's given me. Doesn't include much awards, but it's more positive than negative, shall we say. We'll start off with operational development for 24-25. So operational development obviously includes our apprenticeship programme. We work closely with Cardiff and Vale College, which is known as CAVAC. They've held an annual learners voice survey, which was taking place from all the learners from South Wales Fire and Rescue Service in April 24 to May 24. There were no concerns regarding the results. The majority of responses was over 90%, so they were good or very good, and the survey attracted an 87% response from all the apprentices. So it gave us a robust overview of apprentices' opinions on the training they've received in their initial stages at Cardiff Training Centre. Celebrating achievement on the 13th of February 25, apprentice firefighter Serena Williams from Bridgend was awarded the Emergency Service Sector Award by Cardiff and Vale College for the Apprenticeship Awards. She was also nominated for the Welsh Language Award, which was quite prestigious for our SFJ, our Skills for Justice department. The Centre's also successfully passed 2 external quality assurance audits carried out by the Skills for Justice awarding body. The audits were reviewed on our SFJ award qualifications and quality assurance standards. The success affords us assurance that our Skills for Justice is maintaining our direct claim status at the Centre for the SFJ courses that we deliver. Also, Fire and Rescue Service quality assurance standards were met by firefighters from our control and their development pathways as well. The whole-time apprenticeship programme in 24-25 delivered apprenticeships to 42 trainees, and the service currently has 56 whole-time apprentices on the current 2-year programme. In the financial year of 24-25, the service has accessed £214,630 of Welsh Government funding against a yearly allocation of £311,239,000. So we're well on target to claim the full allocation of funding for the service for apprenticeships. Incident Command courses, 24-25, we held 5 Incident Command Level 1 courses with a pass rate of 81 to 100%, success rate following reassessment. Incident Command Level 2, we've held 3 courses. The initial pass rate was 75% to 100%. Incident Command Level 3 has been one course this year with an initial pass rate of 83%. It says 1 person awaiting reassessment. That person has been reassessed and has been successful. So that covers the Incident Command element. Rolling down onto some other highlights that I was put in the report. Coming on to revalidations of Incident Command. The team does work through a staggering number of sessions to revalidate Incident Commanders. Revalidations currently sit at 408 for Incident Command Level 1, which is our crew and watch managers and firefighters with a command pass. They can respond as acting crew managers. We've done 71 Level 2 at Station Manager level, 29 at Incident Command Level 3, which is Group Manager level. We're currently planning for an Incident Command Level 4 later on this year. The Centre's been working closely with PDR Pro. We've established that the system can be utilised for command hours, recording of command hours, and that part of the system is currently gone live. Command hours will be measured from April 2025 to March 2026, and that will provide us with a good understanding of the level of command hours being claimed at all levels across the service. Moving on to some more highlights. operational development review team. So you can be aware that there's a current project where the merging of OST and ODAT is currently being run, but under the training centre facility during 24-25, the team has carried out multiple debriefs consisting of multi-agency debriefs, structured debriefs, and special reports and critical incident debriefs. The most recent structured debriefs that have been carried out is the Ron Skinner's incident in Tredegar and the Magic Cottage incident, which was in Abergavenny. Feedback from these debriefs has been very positive by all agencies who attended. They've also produced a intranet page, so all the learning that is found from the debriefs and critical incident information has been vetted and published widely across the service on the ODAT intranet page. So all the learning from these incidents can be shared with everybody within the service, both corporate and uniformed. Members of the team have been to RAF Waddington in March, carried out a visit to see and discuss just culture within other training environments, which is just one of the visits that some of the members of staff have been embarking on from Cardiff Gate Training Centre. We also have members of our core skills delivery team visiting HMS Raleigh next week to oversee some training. Driver training, the team has introduced EDART, which is emergency response driving during the hours of darkness. This is part of Section 19 driver standards, which is currently being looked at by the NFCC for all services within the country. Some services have taken the guidance and implemented it already, even though Section 19 hasn't been fully introduced into law. The service have set up their driver training courses, which includes nighttime driving, convoy driving, with all the elements and expectations that Section 19 and the NFC guidance dictates. And we're currently looking at possibly making that transition, like other services within the country, to move towards Section 19 full guidance within the near future, which will mean our driver courses will go from 1 week to 2-week initial driving courses, which means it'll be double contact hours with a candidate who's going for their initial driving. I'll just scroll through the report again to pick up some more highlights. Technical rescue team. So technical rescue team within the centre deliver various technical rescue skill sets, including road traffic collision. So we've just recently implemented a course for rescue tender stations to ensure that our rescue tender operators are trained to a higher level than what our normal firefighters would be. This exposes them to heavy rescue training, where we are supported by a local partner in provision of heavy rescue training, which has proved very, very beneficial, as you will see from some of the pictures contained in the report. We've also worked closely with Pencoed College to produce a large animal rescue intranet package for our firefighters on station. This has been closely supported by the training support unit. It follows the thematic review with the generation of microteach videos. So that intranet page has now been launched and is readily available for firefighters to access on stations to improve their training around large animal rescue incidents. Go down again, BA department, the Real Fire Training Facility. You'll all be aware that the Real Fire Training Facility has recently this year had the interim decontamination facility online. This project has obviously brought our decontamination facility in the centre from 0 to basically 100% to aid in firefighters' welfare. This interim facility is currently going to provide us with the information that's going to be required to move forward into a more permanent facility, which is going to be looked to be put into implementation with the next 18 months to 2 years. This project team met last week, and all the material and the results of the interim facility will feed into that project to allow us to build a purpose-built decontamination facility which will be fit for the future for Cardiff Training Centre. Moving down again, obviously the centre was heavily involved in the recent hose trials. So off the back of the thematic review and Dan Stevens's report, it was identified that the hoses currently used by the service need improvement for tactical firefighting within buildings. The training support and training centre has been heavily involved in the trialling of that those new hoses and provided the statistical data which was used to obviously purchase the recommended hoses to meet the requirements of the report. And those have now been put into operational effectiveness. That feeds into the building firefighting tactics. So Group Manager Mike Evans has been working closely with the BA department and training in regards to the development of building firefighting tactics, which meets the requirements of the report and the thematic review. That's been rolled out across the service now, and all the findings from that initial training has been supplemented into all training materials and practices. So it's been run out across the service as we speak. So planning and partnerships, we've worked closely during half term of 2025 with our Babcock partners. We held a scientific technical education day for fire cadets and young adults at Cardiff Gate Training Centre. We had a large group of teens aged 13 to 16 which came into the centre and were shown various drills, scenarios. They got fully involved within the centre activities. Also looked at the high-tech elements of the centre, which included computer work and incident command area, to try and build that partnership between the training centre and local schools with our Babcock partners, try and feed into some of the issues that L&D have with recruitment from those age groups. Just scrolling down again to see any more highlights. High-rise training, obviously off the back of the Grenfell report, service have implemented a high-rise training team. During 2024-25, they completed phase 1 of the core skills and mass evacuation training to all commanders and control room operators. Training is taking place at Brecknock House, which is currently on the University of Health Board, Cardiff University Hospital. So all crews have been visiting that building and carrying out high-rise training. They're currently in the process of making readiness to roll out phase 2 of the training, which will continue with practical exercises and tabletop exercises for commanders and control room operators. They've also been working on new mass evacuation procedures. A new video has been created by our training support unit, which is 360 high-rise building walkthrough, which talks through the safety systems that should be observed when walking around a high-rise building, how they work, and then it also moves into the implementation of practical firefighting techniques for high-rise buildings as well. Other high-profile events that have been hosted by Cardiff Gate, we had Fire Cadet Games. We've also hosted the UKRO All Wales Extrication Trauma and Rope competitions. We're making readiness for the Women in Fire Service event in October, and we've also held a joint medical student exercise in road traffic collision between Cardiff Health Board University and all our Blue Light Agency partners, which is part of a project which has been running for the last 5 years to help develop any med student who's doing junior doctor work through Cardiff University to be exposed to initial trauma before they go out into the world as a doctor. Those are the basic highlights from Cardiff Gate Training Centre over 24-25. I'm obviously conscious of it's not a warts and all report. Things that probably haven't gone so well for us this year. I'm sure the boss won't mind me mentioning, we've had some difficulties with behaviour with some of our members of staff. One of the projects that we've put in place is that we've just produced an instructor and a learner charter to set out obviously the new core values of the service, the expected and standard appropriate behaviours which are expected from learners and from instructors within all aspects of the centre. That's not just from initial training, that's through technical skills training, etc., etc. And we will be holding a sign-in event for that document for all current instructors within Cardiff Gate at the end of this month, which will be highly publicised. That basically gives me the end of our report.
Anyone comments, Hobbs? Did you come in on budget?
Yes, we were under budget.
Under budget?
Yeah.
Good. I suppose, knowing that Sarah's listening, so why weren't you spent up to budget?
Obviously, with the building of the interim facility, there was a little bit of confusion where the interim facility budget came out of, so our underspend may potentially be going over to that.
Appreciate your last minute here, and well done for picking up the baton. It's always a difficult one where you've got somebody turning up on committee and you have more probably and you've got to explain. So thank you for coming in. Just a couple of things. High-rise training. Did you attend the thing done by Stephen Kirk on Greenfield?
Yes, yeah.
So when you talk about high-rise training, he talks about the RICE system used in Kent.
Yeah.
By Dr. Paul Broomington, the criteria that are met for, do you evacuate or don't you evacuate? And there are a number of conditions about if the building is performing in a certain way, then if the building is performed a certain way as designed, then we don't need to evacuate the whole place because it's going to stay in the compartment or in the flat or on the floor. But if the building isn't performing, then you go. Are we going to include?
Yeah, that is part of phase 2 of the training. So obviously the RICE element is being introduced by our service.
And when it comes to recruiting, because I'm not recruiting, evacuating, it's quite a challenging thing because some people don't want to leave, some people are unable to leave. There are going to be all sorts of challenges. There have been some people that, the reason why we have, not the reason why we have the specialist teams or new dimensions teams. Some people have to come out the windows, don't they, when they're evacuated? They can't come out the door because they're just not.
One of the busiest fire services in the UK for that.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of things when it comes to evacuating. It's one thing going to a place where people are ambulance. It's another thing. If you think a tower block, you will find a lot of people non-ambulance. How do we do that? How fast can? So it's giving the order to evacuate could take quite long. We're going to deal with it here, but it's a complex thing which I think can't be done just on a tabletop. You want to try and get.
It's multifaceted, so it's one of the focuses of the high rise group, and we've had international recognition actually on the work we're already doing in the high rise world from a magazine. They've picked up on it. So we're actually be looking at sort of technology as well. So we're working with an external provider now to provide an app that we can use with control the members of the public as well, because some of them may not even hear the alarms going off.
Yeah,
so they might have something pop up on the phone.
Yeah, vibrating pad or something. Yeah, it's like smoke detectors, isn't it? If you're deaf, because I think the Royal National Institute for Deaf people say they want to be called deaf, they don't want to be called hearing impaired. So it's okay, that's that. The ODART and OS team, I know they're merging. When will be completed by?
So if we want to do the watch manager recruitment, so once we have the green lights of people services to do the expressions of interest, that'll probably take about a month. So once we get that green light,
I'm going to be doing Mike next week.
yeah, great. So we just need that green light, and then we'll move quick.
Roughly when's the go live day?
It's going to be about, so what we're not going to do is push a button without doing all the prep. So the review of the SOPs, a review of the 8 memoirs for what the assurance is going to look like. There's an implementation plan for that. I anticipate that'll be about 3 months.
So go live in 3 months.
Once we merge the teams and get the watch managers into the expressions of interest, it'll be about 3 months worth the getting the work right, that foundation right, before then we hit the green button to say, no, this is the new team.
So there's a general thing when it comes to government scrutiny. If someone's promising to just want to know by when, because otherwise it's it's forever and a day, isn't it? It's like, and that can lead to a constant iteration of something that people never sign off because at least if you've projected a date, and there's a skill in projecting a date, you always need to look at what time you need and add a little bit of capacity. Yeah, you need to deliver it on those dates because then we can.
So we haven't gone into individual recommendation completion dates, as you know, through the thematics. What we have said, and we'll definitely do it, is every single, other than the two that we know, recommendations will be achieved by the 31st of December. Every single one.
That's the day we can work back from.
Yeah.
Good.
This year.
Private training increasing to 2 weeks. That's 100% increase in time.
Yes.
How come we were off the ball on it?
Well, it's section 19 is obviously set out the driver standards from obviously a legal perspective and legislative perspective. That hasn't been made formal legislation as yet, but NFCC have picked it up as national guidance. So even though our current driver courses, we're hitting the elements of NFC national guidance, the elements that we've added to it, which is the nighttime driving and convoy driving, are just specific areas of the section 19. The biggest area, which is obviously the contact hours for a candidate, is something that we wouldn't have been hitting. So that's the reason behind we're starting to put into place now. Post September of this year, our initial driving course will go from 1 week to 2 weeks to meet that guidance.
Okay, fine. I mean, because driving at night is quite a different beast to driving.
Yeah, and that was from feedback from candidates as well.
Yeah.
So when we initially implemented the nighttime driving, the positive review of that was % basically, because nobody had been exposed to that.
Okay, good. So on page 49, when you've got the revalidation, so I was glad to see that we've got this routine, regular revalidation of command. It's one of the things that not every brigade does it and perhaps we're doing. So I think we're doing really well by it. That's good. So 71 station managers have done ICL2. Is that station manager or is that some watch managers have done it as well?
It'll be members who hold a level 2 certificate, yeah. So it'll be watch managers in that transition to station manager.
Okay, because it says 71, but we've got an establishment 57 station managers. So these are watch commanders. And that would explain why there's 29 group managers when we've got 22 in the establishment.
Yes,
These are station commanders.
Yeah, they just hold the level 2 and level 3 tickets.
Okay, good. I suppose it's about training. I suppose for me, part of the elephant in the room here is the issue with Babcock, because we've got a PFI thing which is coming up for decision. If we worked our way back from then, there's an awful lot of work to be done, which needs to be starting
3 years old, I'd suggest. 3 years, because
when's the lease up?
30.
29, 30.
So we need to get our heads
So
around.
next year, you need to be starting the early work on that, when you're talking about a 7-figure contract.
Because the reason I'm pushing that we get this in the narrative of what we're doing is another meeting the other day, we were talking about getting £3 million worth of, was it capital or something to spend on a facility which might be at Cardiff Gate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we then sink £3 million in at Cardiff Gate. And then a year later, we then say, actually, we're going to start a piece of work as to whether we want to be here. We need to, these things are, admittedly, £3 million is ahead of the time of the renewal, but we do that. We are committed. It will change the dynamic of what we're looking at because we'll be invested in the site. We're already part invested in it with the BA complex.
I mean, ultimately, at the end of the contract, Babcock's will either win it or renew and will remain where we are. I can't imagine the site changing unless we do something on an all-wells basis. But nevertheless, we've got to do the due diligence. So the only thing that would change then is we would take over the facilities management and the running of that site. And pay for ourselves. That's where we need to get smarter as you have. And to be honest, things come full circle in the fire service. Roger will know. We used to have dedicated full fire training satellite sites to do real fire training. But obviously the legislative changes, the real fire training is difficult in and of itself.
So I suppose, when we get people from valleys coming down to Cardiff on call, the number of hours they've got available, it's harder, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So, and Cardiff is probably the furthest point we could be for everybody. So whilst it's good for some of the, it's because it's got a coast, because you haven't got anything south of the coast, have you? It's just everyone's coming down. It's being more efficient. And also, I think it's good to have more facilities and
Yes.
get greater use rate.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Oh, the last thing, and it's a thing for all report writing. When you've got an annual update, if there's a report, that's the appendix. The front few pages are to point us to the highlights in the report, what was achieved during the year, what are next steps, what are the pluses and minuses, and then all this good news, which is good, really good news, and sometimes great news, is in the back, as opposed to leafing through some pages. Okay, great, thank you. Was it that bad?
No,
No.
I hope it wasn't.
I saw your eyes light up talking about tech rescue, Rod.
And learning and development.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. I'll get this one up. So this report also covers activity undertaken by the L&D team in 24-25. Different to the ops side of the house, the learning and development team deliver soft skill or leadership development training for all our people. This includes our leadership pathways, masterclasses, and any additional bespoke learning that we need to procure or design and deliver. The report itself provides some detail around our some of the key priorities within the team. So, for example, our personal review. So this is our performance appraisal process. This was launched 3 years ago now, and so we've just completed our third full year. There's a deep dive into the data around completion rates. As you'll see, we were at 63% completion for our contracted employees. We've measured on contracts because, as we know, some of our people have more than one contract. We've done that so that they have the option to have a PR in, say, they may be a full-time employee, and they may also be a fire cadet instructor. So it's important that they get that performance review and feedback in each of those roles. So 63% completion for the year end 24-25. As you will see later in the report, it does show that the numbers are going up in terms of completion. But I think the message for us as a service is we could do better, and we must do better going forward. The personal review was co-created with staff, and so it has a number of different facets to it. So it has a wellbeing check-in, where the line manager sits down with the individual and checks on their wellbeing, including their energy levels and their engagement levels. And the report dives into those levels. So, for example, on page 71, the energy ratings and engagement ratings for staff, where there's a completed PR captured. You can see the energy ratings for 24-25, the numbers or the levels have reduced slightly. I think this is an area where we need to focus in on, and we need to do this through our KPI metrics that we're designing for the team going forward this year. In terms of levels overall, I think one thing that I would say in terms of the PRs, as well as energy engagement and wellbeing checking elements, we undertake a performance rating assessment. So the line manager assesses the individual against almost a 9-box grid, we call it. So there's performance versus behaviours. So this is the opportunity for the line manager to address behaviours that may not be in keeping with the NFCC's leadership framework. And what you will see on page 74 is there's a picture of where those assessments are coming out at. Interesting to note that there are people being assessed as partially meeting expectation, and that's probably a good thing to note, because it shows that we're not all being categorised in the high performing category, and you wouldn't expect to see a whole organisation positioned in that category either. So it's actually quite pleasing to see that there's a smattering across each of those performance assessments. I think for the committee to note that, I think one area that we need to develop, and we've been chatting about this as part of our forward work plan for the L&D team, is going out and refreshing that learning around the personal review. and making sure our managers understand what the purpose is and how they call out behaviour that isn't in line with service expectations. In terms of PRs going forward, then I think there's more to do in terms of upskilling our managers, but all our people as well across the organisation. We need to use the data more in terms of what's coming out of the PR. So whilst we where there's a review and a referral in terms of the wellbeing check-in, what is that telling us as an organisation? Are levels of stress increasing? What's behind that data? Where do we need to focus our efforts from an occupational health perspective, and more broadly in our training offer? So more to do in terms of training and development in that front, and using the data to inform our service direction. The team also undertake induction programmes for our corporate staff, and they look into our ops induction as well, so that they are sharing information around our development programmes, our standards and expectations across the service. In terms of our management and leadership development, the team designed and deliver our learning pathways, and that's set into a different level. So this is leading myself, leading yourself at firefighter level, leading others, so middle leaders, leading the function, more senior leaders, and leading the service. And that programme of development, what the report does tell committee members, is that we linked our learning pathways to our promotion process. Unfortunately, a decision was taken to decouple that link. And what you will see throughout the report is an assessment of the drop-off rate and the inability of the team to onboard people into those pathways because of that decoupling of that link. We have recently undertaken a review of our promotion processes, and that link will be restored as part of that work going forward. So we will see individuals entering the promotion process being required to undertake the relevant learning pathway in order for them to be eligible going forward. I think in terms of the different, so we've also done the same as our ops colleagues. We've got some photographs in the main body of the report, and we will take on board the feedback on GM in terms of how we position the report going forward. I think overall, Brian mentioned the Learning Fund earlier. We have a fund set aside where people can access that to enhance their personal development. So there is a board, and I think Lisa, you sit on that board, so can answer any specific questions around, who's got what, why have we refused people access, which is what the report is kind of alluding to. The board are making decisions on cost benefits analysis, but there will be individual cases that we can perhaps share. Why are there themes around refusal to access the funds? I think overall, in terms of challenges, Chair, you mentioned, yes, there's a positive picture in terms of the direction of travel. There's more to do on PRs. We need to plug the gap of the personal development and professional development drop-offs. So through our learning pathways, and the team have highlighted a challenge for us, which is where we offer upskill to our uniformed colleagues. So, for example, masterclasses on different topics. We don't pay people to attend those masterclasses if they're off shift. So I think that's a discussion that I wanted to put on the table, and is something for the service to take forward and look at that from a budgeting perspective. So it's useful to have Sarah on the call also. The other thing I just wanted to mention, we have in April, so outside the scope of this report, launched our new Leadership and Personal Development Academy, and we've appointed a new lead into that academy, and that lead is working with the L&D team on a piece of work to understand where the gaps are, so what our current offer looks like, and what our new offer going forward is going to look like, with the support of other organisations and also some procurement consultancy to support us with that piece of work. So I think I'll pause there and I'll be sticking.
No, good. You have?
No, I've seen the additional learning fund, so I'll copy and paste that, some of it.
A couple of things on page 74. When we look at these various categories, when it comes to the terms at the bottom, they're slightly different. So you've got half-yearly meeting, significant meeting exceeding, which is great. And then that's one, just half-yearly meeting or exceeding, not exceeding. It's not consistent. I was trying to compare. We've got, see what I mean?
So it would probably be more helpful to show the grid.
Yes.
So
Oh,
the exceeding expectations in top right, and there's one of those.
Okay.
And then the grid moves away, so you've got performance in one axis, behaviour in the other. And so you will have two significantly exceeding. One is around you've been excellent in your behaviours, but not so in your performance. So I think probably in future we'll put the grid in and show the numbers within that grid.
That'd be better. That,
Yeah.
that didn't. And I think that's really important that you get, because this goes back to they're really good at their job, but they're a complete difficult person to manage in the
Yes,
workplace.
yes.
You can't, you know, we want that top right quadrant.
Yes.
So that's one thing. I think the taking the pathways off, as you said there, we recall this in the minutes, was a tactical mistake that was made at the time. That's the question I'd probably be asking of everyone here at the table. You know, have we got the right level of technology to support the learning we've got and we're doing? Because young people, and that's everyone in the room today, young people, even younger than you, I think, really young people, they're on there. Everything's on iPads and IT right from the get-go. You go to young children, 3, 5 years old, they're on iPads. So are we catering to this approach?
So we do with the whole-time recruits.
So these can be the recruits coming through.
So whole-time recruits are all issued laptops and everything's done through computer.
Good. You should not see that in the pictures that you sent.
You've got this fascination with teaching people.
Yeah, something. Yeah, I think because when I used to be when I was a deputy pro-charge at Aston University, they said we want to understand if people are going to come forward to join to do degree courses, we need to understand what 5-year-olds are doing. Because they're going to be picking GCSEs and then A-levels and then courses at degrees. And if we're looking at the recruitment market, you know, if you can inculcate a 5 and 8-year-old's mindset, they want to be a firefighter because it's X, Y, and Z, as opposed to just a big red shiny thing. That's a career pathway that can be determined at a very young age, and also involving them in tech, us in tech. So have we got levels of tech available?
So yeah, and that's a different question, which is and again, that's a whole systems approach to the service almost in terms of, so on the 2nd of July, side issue, but it's relevant to what you asked, we've got the next ICT Strategic Management Board meeting. That is a critically important meeting because it was purely attended at the last meeting, you know, fair play, at least your team was well represented, put everything they need on the table, but that wasn't the same for the rest of the service. So I've put a marker down. If you're not in the room then you can forget about what you asked for the next 18 months, because whatever was on the table then, that key decision-making team, because it'll all be area managers and equivalents, or if they come to 10, you know, the equivalent to a group manager B. We get everything on the table then, which will be some of the questions you asked there, Chair, which will be about digitizing the workforce. So ultimately, we want to get to a position where everything's accessible by your phone or your tablet, everything. So that big discussion we got then. We've also got a company, not-for-profit company, are going to come in and do some work with us around that. To give us a steer based on their experiences working with you know, very successful private and public sectors. So we'll see where that meeting goes then, but that will be on the table then, which so Neil Davis, L&D, whoever, will put that on the table, which will be.
So the reason I asked about again when is because we're in June in summer, August, we're difficult to get meetings sorted out because people are going to be away. And when you get into September, the budget process is already pretty well underway. And if you then come up with several serious proposals in December, you'll be slightly outside the curve when it comes to getting money for this.
End of July usually, budgets, you gotta cover your
Yeah,
budget.
so what I'm saying is if we're
No, that's right, that's why it's
you
really
could
important, second
be
July.
behind the curve in terms of the timing on this, we might have to wait another
That's right.
cycle or then get to a harder budget to get reserves or something else fired across.
Right.
Okay, so that's something to keep an eye on.
You know, major chair as well, major change as well, Chair, just to add that as well, is that we have published a use of corporate personal devices and cloud services procedure as part of the information security management software suite. And the reason I bring that forward is obviously people using their personal devices for work apps. So a lot of work has been done to get that procedure online now. So obviously moving forward, it's not about always issuing the tech, because again, the expense and the
Yeah.
turnover of staff. It's about taking a new leap into, if we have an app where we use something for work.
That's the mission.
It's about permission, it's about cloud storage, it's about security and the cyber security. So I think publishing that procedure for us into 2026, 6th of March is when I think it was published, does allow us then to be able to offer people, it's not a case of giving you a device, in a case of access on the fact that have progressed now, I think will be quite big. So I think in the meeting you're talking about next week, it's about every decision going forward in terms of software, in terms of any computing decision we make now, that accessibility from your own personal device will actually start factoring into that decision as well.
There's sort of kind of three areas for you've got hardware, software. So we'll talk. So and then there's permissions or access. We've been poor on permissions and access because everyone's been held quite tightly. Whereas, you know, when I have my personal phone, I can access stuff, and other people can if they know how to do it. But so that's one thing. The other thing is about having the apps and the software, because we want, if you were performance managing, you would want a screen, say in reception as you came in, which gave us like a dashboard of activity in the organisation, number of calls attended today, number of calls currently running, number of people employed by the service, number of, you know, you'd have a digital dashboard for the performance of the organisation that could be a ready reckoner for, you know, it's an advertising thing as well. And also it enables us to understand where the organisation is at any one particular time, number of recruits in training centre due to pass out, number of, you know, all that stuff.
If I may, Chair, I think there's probably a fifth dimension, that's training. What we haven't been good at in the past is we bring a new software package in and we train people up retrospectively. And what happens in my experience is people lose confidence in the system, not because the system doesn't work, it's just they've never been shown how to use it properly. So we need to get smarter with that. So when we start bringing new software in, so the analogy I'll use, you talk about the operational development review team merging. We're not just going to flip the button and switch up. We're going to get everything right before we flip the switch, and we got to do the same when we bring the packages in.
And of course, we know I'd say on that is that parts from good can be perfect. Sometimes if we wait too long to get it absolutely perfect, then we could go with 90% of it. It's one thing.
No, I agree.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if a number of the people we recruit to the organisation are underwhelmed by the lack of technology, let alone how difficult it is to train on it. You know, the absence of technology and the vast amount of paper, I'm pretty sure I've got this, but you know, there is a huge amount of paper-based system. Go
On that point, I think we also need to remember the other scale, which is the digitally excluded. So I think pre-COVID Welsh Government figures for South Wales area was 22% demographically were digitally excluded. I think since COVID that's improved to around 17%, but we still have a demographic in the workplace that are barely able to type an email. So we do need to invest in upskilling their capability digitally as well. That's another cost.
So that percentage was the community though, wasn't it? It wasn't the workplace. It'd be useful to know what we feel are digitally excluded in the workplace.
And that's a piece of work that we're looking at the moment, is to actually do that evaluation. And that again is part of the Step Forward programme. But there does need to be an investment in upskilling
And I can't
digital
think of
capability.
any job. Generally, most jobs that you would apply for here, you'd have to be able to use some form of. I understand the thing about digital exclusion, but most people can get money out of cash machine.
You've got to think about the length of service of some of our employees. They've been here for 15, 20, 25 years. So they're barely able to type an email. And we do need to invest in upskilling.
It's a personal, it's a duty on us from Welsh Government, isn't it? And the example I'll use there is some fire services do this, where the duty doesn't exist, by the way. We got socially deprived communities that can't afford access driving tests, pay for driving lessons. So they're never going to have a driving license and be able to apply for a job in the fire service because they can't afford to pay for the lessons. And some fire services will fund driving
It
lessons.
takes a year to get a driving test, then, doesn't it?
About a year, and you know, my daughter's going through lessons now, and they're about £50 a pop.
So
It's just an example
Yeah.
where we have got that duty in
Yeah.
Wales.
there are things around exclusion, but equally there are things about access. But there are all sorts of groups of people, aren't there? There are people that are technically enabled, there are people who just use it day to day, and that's something we find it very hard. That doesn't mean that you can't move forward with it, because if you wait for 100%, there are some people that will absolutely refuse to do it, and then what do we do about that? We still have to move forward. So we have to do what we can.
Absolutely.
I suppose it's that refusal, is it born out of fear?
Yeah.
And so it's again, coming back to big budgeting and costs, we need to put costs in for upskilling and
Yeah.
training people.
And when it came to paying people to attend courses, the other way to do it is toil. As opposed to paying people to be educated, and, you know, I think there's a danger. The fire service, for the uniform side, gives everything except underpants. You know, there is this thing that, and if we're going to educate you, we're going to pay you to educate you. Actually, you know, we'll provide you time off in lieu. Be managed within the system. There's a time built into the multiplier. Is it the multiplier? But the ridership factor for training. Training and education are symbiotic. So we don't need to pay people to give them time off.
And to give you that reassurance of what we've said there, it's a phrase I'll use. So that's my mantra for the team on the ICT is don't let perfect get in the way of good. Let's get something in and we can get different versions and iterations of it as we
You
go.
also find that once the project started going, the event outcomes are different to what the projected outcomes were before, because incremental discovery takes you down different routes. And so by slavishly holding to the project plan right at the start, and all the evidence is telling you it doesn't need to go that way, would be contrary as well. Right, anything else? No? Russell Ryan.
Yep, that was me, Chair. So the report provides an overview of whistleblowing disclosures, complaints, and compliments and concerns received by the service during the financial year 2024-25. The first time last year as well, we added in the concerns right through the FRS Speak Up service as well. So that was our partnership with Crime Stoppers, so the anonymous complaints reporting. And then we get fed a summary or an overview of some of the complaints we've had for investigation. There are a number of highlights in the report and reassurances for the committee. So in terms of whistleblowing, I think the report starts talking about the fact that we do have a well-established whistleblowing procedure, a reporting mechanism, and there were no whistleblowing complaints during the last financial year. Moving then on to complaints. The complaints are formally managed by our business support team. So just to be aware, there are grievance reporting is different. So staff will raise complaints about other members of staff or how they've been treated in terms of processes. We'll normally use a grievance procedure. This is predominantly the complaints raised from members of the public. It is open to staff as well, but this whole process is managed by our business support department. And I think from a reassurance point of view, we can receive complaints by phone, by email, by letter, or the website itself. So it's a very accessible service. We've run it for a number of years. Other reassurances are that every complaint we get by this mechanism is logged, they're acknowledged. We do put a timescale on when we will be providing an answer, whether it's what we'll do with it, or what we'll do with it. And we'll respond to every complaint as well. So we won't leave anything, even regardless of what it looks like. There are times where if you use the website, you do have to obviously provide contact details. And sometimes if those contact details are non-contactable or it's a telephone number that we can't use, we'll still try and respond to every single complaint. And every single one of them is looked into regardless of what an initial view of it is. And it's worth noting that we received as a service 67 complaints last year by all of these mechanisms. There was just an 11% decrease on the previous year. So it was 67 we received versus the 75 the previous year. We do have almost a three-round process for managing complaints. So initially we receive a complaint, we will send it to a head of service or a member of the senior leadership team for initial consideration. They'll tend to hand it to an officer who will investigate the complaint by any means necessary. We'll then send an initial response, and as part of that, we'll let the individual know that if they're not happy with the response, that we'll review it independently with a different set of officers. And if anybody then doesn't want, isn't satisfied with the second response, we'll refer them on to the public ombudsman for Wales. So you'll see in there that we did one query, one of our complaints did get escalated to the public ombudsman for Wales last year. But we did then receive a letter from the ombudsman saying that they were not going to take any further issue with that one. Part of the report then further down, we've broken the complaints down. We break them down into 4 categories. So the first one is behaviours, and that'll often be behaviours by predominantly members of our staff that have been reported by members of the public. Driving is a category we often capture, and that's where we've had complaints around. They often focus on the speed, what people have taken, whether they've seen people without their seatbelts on, they've seen anyone making a manoeuvre or parking in places they shouldn't, that they believe they shouldn't, sorry. Service delivery, and that's the way obviously we're satisfied the way we deliver our services. I mean, I've reviewed them. We have a few on how we people saying that the smoke alarms have fallen back off the ceiling when they've been put in, well, yeah, sometimes there may be some queries around what they've seen at a certain incident or how we've undertaken our duties. And then miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is a bit of a catch-all category, and I think this again can often be current affairs. It's some of the public's opinions of things that they've seen or read. It's a whole host of things that they'll ask. If they've got wind of any expedition or charitable event that they're not happy with, or something's going to be around a fireworks display or the way we've conducted a community event in terms of noise, congestion and parking. So it's a really valuable mechanism, I think, in terms of that voice we've got with the public. It's that two-way conversation around, well, again, we're happy to receive feedback, and obviously we do respond regardless of why we've done it. We've given that, we provide that rationale as to why, and obviously we use it for operational learning. So if anyone had called us with anything, community safety, there's something falling off the ceiling, of course we'll revisit and we'll refit the alarm. And we use it as well for sometimes some insurance claims may come off the back of it as well. So if someone has complained that that there's been some damage on the way there, we've knocked into a garden wall or something like that, we will process that then by our insurance team. So page 98 then is where that breakdown comes in. I think what was quite positive this year is behaviour is the category that was highest last year by a significant amount. I think that was probably partially in line with what was going on in the news. Obviously that number is reduced, and of course miscellaneous. I will say again, a lot of the changes in the service, a lot of the press engagement we've done, we've had a lot of feedback on things like that, which again we've responded to. The next part then is compliments. I think we look at anything positive. We do often get a lot of positive feedback from the website or on social media. We get tagged into a lot of thank yous, or we get a lot of letters. So we've counted them. It's actually the lowest number we've received in a long time. There's a 37.5 decrease there. But what I will say, we've had some transition in the team in terms of some senior members of staff who've moved departments or resigned or retired rather. So I think it's about grasping that process back, just to ensure that we haven't missed any. So I can only really count what I had available, but whether there are any other mechanisms of receiving it that I've not been able to find, I'll certainly review that. And the final one is the concerns raised by our FRS Speak Up. So that's from our Crime Stoppers line. There's an external company. They offer triage what comes into them, and they send it back down to us with the right level of information. To note here, though, I think from what I was available, I hadn't received the figures for March 2025. I'm not sure whether there wasn't anything for report. What I've noticed, though, if you look at the trend, I think towards the end of last year when I reported the same, we had an escalation in these numbers around about January, February, March. As you can see in this report, in April and May, we got a significant amount of the portion there. So I think as we were going through that transition in early 2024 with a lot of new recruits and a lot of high profile recruitment, I think we've got a lot of complaints via this mechanism around that. I think we have done some communication about what this actual mechanism is for. I think at one point it became just a lot of complaints or a lot of disgruntled individuals using it, whereas actually it's meant to be for raising concerns around harassment and misogyny and bullying and things like that. So we did start doing a bit of comms on this, I think, earlier in the last financial year, just to try and ensure the mechanism was was used effectively, but yeah, as you can see towards the end of the year, we had one complaint in February. It's likely there may not have been any in March, but again, I await. I think with them being a third party, I would have to wait for that report to come in. If it's not available, I don't have, I've limited options of what I can do about it. In terms of improving this process, and I think probably what I have reviewed on here is well, this report can provide some reassurance that we do have the mechanisms in place. The outcomes of each complaint are not reported in here, and actually they're not always known. So I think sometimes as a business support team, we will feel the initial complaint, but again, it's a case of farming it out to different departments. I think what I'm going to try and improve here is to make sure that if a complaint comes in, how many of them, what have they all resulted in? What were the nature of the response we gave? The majority of them accepted it. So when we provided an apology, whether we provided some reassurance to the individual, whether we gave them further information, or actually whether some of these complaints have actually turned into grievances, disciplinaries, and even maybe the outcomes of them. But again, I know there's confidentiality issues there that I may be able to explore. So I think I certainly in this report can provide a bit further reassurance in the next report to commissioners around what comes from these complaints and what the outcomes are. I noticed there is a gap in the reporting at the moment. So again, I'll have to look at what exactly, how can I follow the progress around each of these. Certainly based on what we reply to the public, I could probably include that in next year's report. But yeah, in terms of understanding if any were crime stoppers, how many of them are resulting in disciplinary staffing issues. I don't have that information available, but it's an annual summary of what we have. And again, I think it's a really valuable mechanism, I think, in terms of communicating with the public. I think it's, 60, 70 complaints is quite a nice way of they're not nice to receive, but obviously it's nice that we can have the mechanisms that are well used and that we do reply to every single one of them. It's one we want to continue and keep being accountable to the public. And I'll take any questions.
Okay, any comments, observations? I've got one thing. I'm presuming we have a standard or a service level arrangement where we say we will respond to your complaint within so many.
Yes.
We acknowledge it, and then we will get back to you in. So how what are those performance? Do we always get back to everyone acknowledging it with 100%? Do we always investigate it and give them an initial outcome within X number of days or weeks or months? Or how good are we at doing it? Because I couldn't see it.
No, you're right. No, I think we do have that, and I probably can provide that at a later date. I think we've been. I think it depends on the complexity of the complaint. The vast majority of them are straightforward, thankfully, and because obviously we do. If for example, somebody, depending on the nature of the complaint, if somebody, but we'll certainly continue that conversation if it's something more complex.
So you could do them as complex or.
Yeah, of course.
Have we hit 100% of non-complex ones within 6 weeks or 3 months? Or
no, that's a good observation. I think we do. I think we give ourselves, I think it's 20 working days. I think, which I'm not sure where that standard has come from. But I certainly could include that in there as well for next.
One of the things that people always want to know, when am I going to hear? We've got a society now, haven't we, where you order something the night before and you expect it to turn up the next day. And likewise, I'm assuming that people have they put a complaint in, when are they going to hear back?
That's a great point. I think the other thing for me as well is important is there probably is a different. I think one of the mechanisms we do use a lot with the complaints is we tend to call the individual via telephone. I think a lot of the officers we have probably put a value on having that initial conversation with them as well. So I think it's probably worth measuring as well, because by the time that maybe the written response may be outside of scope. Not that it always is, but it may be. But sometimes they'll have had multiple conversations, which I think that is quite well received by members of the public. So I think I'll probably need to get well review the process to ensure that any telephone conversation is logged as well, so I can actually talk about that ongoing management of the complaint, not just the final response. So no, I think that's it.
Okay, and also when you've got internal programs such as tackling behaviours, we might expect to receive an increase in people whistleblowing our complaints, because they'll say, well, actually that behaviour is no longer not tolerated in any shape or form. But the tackling behaviours program tries to get people to have a conversation at an early stage, doesn't it, rather than going down the complaint route. So maybe
I think the grievance, I think the next report has
Yeah.
has grievances, and I think they may have increased, and I think that our staff are very well versed in the grievance procedure, and so I think staff issues will be reported that way. This predominantly is members of the public.
Okay, right, fine. Anything else? No. Okay, then on to the grievances. Lisa.
As Chair, so this report will give a summary of all grievance and disciplinary matters investigated in the last financial year. As we'll be aware, both grievance and disciplinary procedures is a statutory obligation. At the moment, disciplinary grievance cases are managed by a people services manager that's responsible for culture and engagement, and they are supported by 3 investigators. We continue to address the Morris Review recommendations. And as part of that, we have constantly promoted the avenues for reporting concerns. So that in itself, as anticipated, will have resulted in more cases or concerns being raised. And we have aligned with new legislation to support zero tolerance on sexual harassment within the workplace. And we developed the Educate to Prevent programme. Part of which includes conflict resolution training, which, as you alluded to earlier, about early intervention, resolving things, nipping things in the bud much earlier before they escalate. So as of time of writing this report, 88 managers, both operational and corporate, had undertaken that conflict resolution training. The Taking Care of Behaviours programme, which Matthew alluded to earlier, that's starting to really embed itself now, and we're getting some really positive feedback from that face-to-face delivery. Again, that's promoting awareness of what constitutes sexual harassment, what is bullying, what is banter versus bullying, and it's also covering vexatious allegations, which we're starting to see a little bit of an increase on. But again, in promoting awareness of these things, we do anticipate that there may still be a continuation in the number of cases that are raised for us to investigate going forward. We've implemented mediation training, APEX qualified mediators. So 8 employees are currently going through that training at the moment. We anticipate that they will all have been fully trained by the end of July. The breakdown of figures in this report are general in terms rather than specifics, because naturally we need to preserve confidentiality and anonymity given the nature of some of the matters that we would be investigating. So during the period, 35 grievances were received compared to 10, so a significant increase on the prior year. Again, a mix, so 22 from whole time, 2 from on-call employees, 10 from corporate and 1 from control. There were 5 allegations of bullying and or harassment, and there was an allegation of vexatious allegations within that mix. As I said, this is last year, we're still starting to see that increase as at the moment. The allegations of breaches of data, there were a lot of complaints around processes, or particularly the promotions process, because some changes were implemented last year that then resulted in a number of employees being dissatisfied with changes that were introduced. Moving on to disciplinaries, so there were 53 reported alleged breaches of discipline, higher than the 31 the prior year. Again, a mix, so 8 corporate, 30 on-call, 34 whole-time at firefighter level, and 24 related to management or ramped operational roles. The issues, there were 14 related to bullying, harassment or abuse of position, 12 related to conduct with the potential to breach service core values. Some concerns can be outside of the workplace as well. So we had 11 relating to domestic, social behaviours or sexual harassment type behaviours, and 16 into other allegations, which we can't break down, otherwise you'd be able to potentially identify, so we need to preserve anonymity there. In terms of suspensions, and sometimes there is a need to serve a suspension. 28 were served during the financial year, and with an additional 3 alternatives to suspension were enacted. Outcomes of investigations that were concluded in the financial year, we had 1 dismissal for gross misconduct, and 25 cases were still pending at the end of the financial year. So during the period, both grievance and disciplinary cases were above average, not unexpected given the circumstances at the time. Moving forward, I think it's important that we need to distinguish the difference between what is truly a grievance. That's something that we need to do some education on, and our disciplinary grievance procedures are currently being drafted by the employment lawyers. We anticipate implementing them during Q2. We anticipate an overall reduction in cases over the next 2 years, notwithstanding what I said about a continued uplift as we do this awareness programme with taking care of behaviour. Because we talk about that standing in that roadshow, we talk about how to report it. So we do think that the trend may continue for a period of time before it starts to drop off in terms of not necessarily new behaviours, but behaviours that have been experienced historically. You know, the anticipation is that we will sort of reduce that over time. So that the Leadership Academy, looking to develop leadership and personal development, the Educate to Prevent programme of training, as well as the Promotions Reform Project. So a lot of complaints were in relation to promotions, the mediation framework, early resolution, and development and integration of a professional standards unit that we're working on. An appendix to this report was the Historical Grievance Project that was instigated following the Morris report, and the commissioners were appointed, as you were aware. Welsh Government requested a review of historical grievances that had maybe been referenced through the culture review. So 31 historic grievance cases were identified following a desktop review, and resource was allocated to the project in September. 17 cases were identified to be reviewed, 3 of which were ex-employees who contacted commissioners via their local member of the Senate to review. It was found that some of those cases are interlinked to current ongoing investigations. Some were found to be outside of the Morris report parameters as they related to disciplinary matters rather than grievances. However, as you know, the service decided it would be right to review those anyway. Process was defined and an independent resource was recruited that's been very much independent of the service. The nature and age of each of the cases can vary in terms of the complexity. Some of them being much older in nature, therefore the availability of documentation to be able to conduct the review was quite challenging. And sometimes there was a reluctance from individuals to cooperate. Where individuals required wellbeing support, if they were still employed, it was offered internally, or we were signposting to external resources where appropriate. As I mentioned, access to documentation has very much been the main barrier. So the resource has been working quite closely with information governance to see what we can do to access information that's not readily available on drives. In terms of a progress review, as I said, 17 cases were identified, 2 have been closed, 2 are current, at the time of writing the report, being reviewed by the commissioners. 2 were in the process of being quality assured, ready to share with the commissioners. 3 are on hold because they're interlinked with current investigations. 1 individual decided to withdraw their request for review. 1 is in its final stages, and we have 6 remaining. In terms of the recommendations that were made, I think the commissioners have accepted the recommendations that have been identified thus far. I think it's important to note that many of the improvements had been identified anyway, so they were in transit, but in naturally doing this review, it reinforces the direction of travel that we're taking to make those improvements.
Okay, anyone else? So I guess the one thing about these things is the speed with which how long it takes to get from point a complaint disciplinary starts to the time it finally concludes. Do you think we are as swift as we would want to be?
No.
I guess that's the sort of thing that in here that's the walking walk, isn't it? We need to be, and it'd be good to sort of get a professional best guesstimate from you about, you know, we are 30% longer than we would want to be, or 50%, I mean, just something to get an idea of how much time. Some of these have taken a long, long time.
Yeah, so we've got, have to be careful, obviously. So there's some really complex cases that are interlinked and involve quite a number of employees, both currently serving and that may have retired or left the service. So in terms of last financial year compared to the year before, we have actually reduced the time it takes when you extract that number of complex cases.
What sort of factor?
Oh, I can get it for you. I do have the calculation.
It's still
I
not
have
very
the
long,
notes.
though, is it?
No,
It's still-
no. Being able to find the information that we need can be challenging.
So just on that, accessing the information, there's A, access information, if it doesn't exist, we can't access it. Then there's B, it exists but we don't have it, so it exists somewhere else. But then there's C, that we do have it, but there are internal barriers to accessing it. That's something we can do. We need to have a conversation. I mean, I know a little bit about something that's happened, but we need to sort this out because this needs to be resolved at your level in order to be able to facilitate this, because people try to go and get that and they can't get the information because they can't do X, Y, and Z. We need to make sure that we operate in the spirit of the regulation, but we also need to expedite these things because the historic grievances, for example, I know I signed one off just recently, but the time, it would be useful to see the timeframes on these because September 2024, we allocated the resource. We are now 9 months down and we've cleared two off the decks. And it would be useful to know when we think we're all in a position to have achieved this outcome, because this is a vanilla Morris thing, isn't it?
It is. So we're at the moment, we anticipate being on track. So we allocated 12 months. So we've got 6. So the majority of them have been done now. We've got 6, which we do anticipate, given the current situation, that they will be completed by the end of August. So we're on track to complete
I
them.
think that can even be reviewed, be completed by the end of August.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we tackle the more complex ones. So if you can imagine, you can do a bit on each one at a time, depending on what information is available.
And we've kept people informed as
Yes.
things have been going, and we're sort of just keep in touch there.
From a point of view, is that the data protection team report to myself, what I will say, maybe this is something that's, the world has become a lot more digital. I think the fact that there's so many more pieces of information that people know exists somewhere, and they may not know exactly what they want, but the fact that, for example, you can ask for emails, notes, you can ask for personal records, any digital, and anything digital with your where you're involved in your name is it, you can ask for under data subject access. However, a lot of that information won't just relate to yourself. So you can only have what. So the problem you have with that is somebody will know something exists, they'll know they want it, and if the person who's made the complaint will ask for this, it won't always be part of what we'll need to do, but someone will ask for it. The problem you have then is they'll know it's there. There'll be hundreds or even thousands of pages of what they want, but they can only eligibly ask for 25% of it. So you end up having a team then who manually has to redact, because it's a lot of other people's confidentiality at stake as well. So a lot of these cases that InfoGovernance are looking at the moment, they're very complex because it's about what you're allowed to have as part of your investigation versus the confidentiality of other people who are involved. You can't have that information as well. So it becomes then overly complex when somebody wants 1,000 pages of something for the sake of the 3 pages that may help their case. And it's weeks potentially of them having to manually redact.
Yes, I accept that.
Yeah.
I think my program was aimed more at our internal people accessing our own databases to get information as opposed to someone else. Do we have internal restrictions between, say, the resolutions team?
Yeah.
Being able to access all the information that they need. There's pushback backwards and forwards between those two groups, aren't there?
There are challenges
Yeah.
to access the information that's needed to follow the investigation trail.
Yeah.
It,
So I guess that needs to be at your level and your level, that needs to be sorted out.
Yeah.
So we should just to get it, we need to get these things cleared on the decks because they've been. We'll never have moved forward if these things are still ongoing. We need to try the historic grievance one for certain. We absolutely need to draw a line under this. It's great that it's going to be in August. We also need to be able to facilitate these investigations to be done that faster than they're done now. It's just taking too long.
another factor is witness availability and barriers by people being available for the interview.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There can be a,
Then people changing their story once it starts to go to disciplinaries.
so there's it's multifaceted.
Yeah, we have to be pragmatic. I mean, if it's just around, some people will then say, for example, someone's suspended for a long time. Well, it has a detrimental impact on them. They're less likely, the longer it goes on, to be able to re-engage back into the workplace successfully. So there's a wider detriment. So we need to just make sure that we think about, I'm sure we do, but I'm sure it could be expedited quicker.
Yeah.
Okay, enough said. This stuff's sort of sensitive, so it needs to be done that cycle. Let's just put the marker down for the speed. Right. Anyone else? Moving on then, occupational health. Ruth.
Yep, I'll present that to you. So I'll present the report for the reporting period 2024 to 25. I know you've, Dr. Griffiths has gone through the report, so I'll give an overview as well of the report. Looking at point 3, set at table 1, I think the appointments coming through occupational health has been quite consistent with the previous reporting period. Slight reduction in routine medicals towards the end of the year. That's just because our additional nurse we employed for 2 years left in December 24. So the medicals are now split up between myself and another nurse. So there's just been a slight reduction there. I think they were higher at one point anyway, because we were post-COVID on a bit of a backlog. So they're probably a bit more consistent to where they should be now. The asbestos checks, you can see a 0 in the first reporting quarter. That's just because the HSC introduced that it was only occupational health physicians that could do the asbestos medicals. They were previously done by nurses. So now each time somebody comes in for a medical, they also have to see the doctor for 15 minutes for an asbestos check. It does take a bit of the doctor's time out of their clinic. So we find it quite difficult to fit them in, but we are getting them through, you know, their legal requirements. They are done every time somebody comes for a medical. The health and fitness advisors activity remains consistent. I'll go into a little bit about what they've been doing as well, additionally to their appointments. But interestingly, I think we do something called functional assessments. The health and fitness advisors do. That has gone up from 37 in the previous period to 82. What happens now, just give you some background, is that if somebody comes in for, we assess them for maybe a knee injury and they're absent from work, instead of, we will assess them as a clinician, but instead of us needing to see them again, we will refer them to the physiotherapist for their rehabilitation. The physiotherapist will see them. If the physiotherapist is happy with their progress and they've got a good understanding of the role of the fire service and the firefighter, they'll ask the health and fitness advisors to do their functional assessment, which is targeted to the weights that the strength the firefighters need for the role. And if they then pass the functional assessment, the health and fitness advisors can then send a report to People Services, letting them know that people are fit to return to work. Whereas previously they probably had to come back to the clinician, taking up another appointment just to confirm their fitness. So that's quite useful for us. So that's increased. Referrals, I think, have increased. I have written down previous numbers. I think actually in the past reporting period, management referrals and sickness absence were consistent. However, I think the figures look a little bit higher because we've included the asbestos medicals as referral in that table. So really, I think the referrals are quite consistent. There hasn't been much of an increase. We had 9 cases referred to our independent qualified medical practitioner bill at health retirement. There was 8 in the previous reporting period, so that's quite consistent. With regards to our investigation and treatment services, this is where we would have used Spire for private funded treatment. Obviously, there's been a massive decrease in the amount of money spent there, and I think it explains in the report that obviously that we're looking into other resources for this, but also we only did 1 surgical procedure in the last reporting period compared to 16, but then in table 5, just giving a little bit of a breakdown to what is the waiting time with the NHS compared to what is the waiting time if we go privately through Spire. So that was requested and we just popped that in. That was just based on the 1 surgical procedure that we did. With regards to what we do outside of our clinics is obviously giving specialist advice to the organisation. So either myself or Dr. Griffiths or health and fitness advisors are part of the health and safety committee, your health group, claims groups. Dr. Griffiths attends the contaminants working groups. So generally we get involved when advice is required. It could be noise risk assessments and things like that. So we attend other meetings in between our clinics. Our physiotherapy service continues to be once a week. I think that's just what's needed at the moment. You know, we had somebody recently asking, should we be having more as an employee? But actually, once a week, we can fill that clinic. But we've only got a 2-week wait for physio at the moment. So compared to the NHS, you're probably waiting, I don't know, 2 to 3 months. So it's not that bad. For employee wellness and mental health support, we continue to have our partnership with Dr. Tracy Vick through Liaison Psychiatry. I think she's been with the service 20 years now and is retiring actually this year. She was absent for part of the first quarter last year because of surgery. So we used CBT Cardiff to provide services in the meantime. We've used them previously. They work closely with Veterans Wales, so they're quite experienced. But the number of people referred and treated, I think, is quite consistent. And then Dr. Vick has provided a breakdown of the cases, the type of cases she's seen. I actually looked at the figures of last year for per cases. So PTSD, for example, was 7 in the last reporting period and 8 this time. So there's only an increase of 1. Also, we've got the counselling service. So at the moment, we're using a company called Your Health is One. We've got 3 counsellors at the moment, covering days Monday to Thursday. On the Thursday, we have 3 appointments for free, actually, because we're using students that come in. Students come to the end of their course. They come for 2 or 3 sessions they do per week. You know, very good feedback with regards to them. And those 3 slots at the moment are free because obviously they're training. We broke down, because I think it was asked to break down why we have like unable to attend counselling appointments, did not attend appointments, and why slots were not filled. Unable to attend, I think, is a lot of the time is the nature of the job. So if somebody is coming on a day where they're on duty, they might have to go on a shout, or the staffing might have reduced on that day, so they can't attend. They did not attend. The figures actually increased from 38 in the previous reporting period to 22. I spoke with our counsellors with regards to did not attend. They think our figures as a service is actually quite good. They have significantly higher with the NHS and other contracts they hold. Our did not attend, sometimes it can just be people being forgetful, but the counsellors do now send text message reminders out the day before. But also I think it's just speaking to the counsellors, it's just to the nature of why they come in sometimes that they might become overwhelmed and then, you know, struggle to attend appointments. But I think overall, 22 appointments missed or, did not attend for the reporting period is actually quite good compared to other organisations. With regards to slots not filled, we had one counsellor going on maternity leave, a new counsellor Phil coming in. So there was a point of phasing out and phasing in where we couldn't give them too many appointments in one day because they wouldn't be able to, continue to see them due to going on leave. Also, though, we've still got the employee assistance program. I keep trying to promote this because our employee assistance program is VivUp. They offer online advice with regards to finance. They provide counselling, telephone and face-to-face, and actually the employees can have 6 sessions free without actually coming through Orc Health. So with regards to availability for appointments, and the days they can attend, sometimes they may be better going through the employee assistance program because they might be able to see them more often. However, I think our current wait with our counselling service, it can go up to 6 weeks at busy periods, but at the moment it's only 2 weeks to see a counsellor. I think the NHS current waiting list to see a counsellor I know somebody referred last November and they're still waiting to be seen. So obviously 2 weeks is extremely good for counselling. The fact that we've got at the moment 2 females, 1 male gives people option of who they prefer to see, but also covering Monday to Thursday, we've got 4 days available for people to have appointments. Awareness raising events, I think what's gone down really well in the last reporting period was putting blood pressure monitors at every work location. I've been along to stations where they are out using the blood pressure monitors. I've had several employees tell me that they've gone to see the GP due to high blood pressure and being treated. So I think something that actually cost possibly 2,000 for the whole service to have blood pressure monitors has been really effective. Because obviously to have somebody off on long-term absence with a heart issue would be more costly. And sometimes we have to remove operational firefighters from duty due to high blood pressure while they're waiting to get treated. So this is just being a bit more proactive. The occupational health nurses now attend the crew manager and the watch manager induction days. Now, we were asked to go along and talk about health and well-being, but actually what we found was more beneficial was going along and giving scenarios on how to manage situations on station. So if somebody's in a crisis with regards to their mental health, if somebody's not physically fit, but also just how to refer somebody to Occ Health, because I think sometimes managers are promoted in the service and they're not always aware of these type of processes because they've never had to do it. They've never had to refer somebody. So we're using those sessions now to go through that type of thing with them, what Occ Health is for, what it isn't for. But they're very engaging. I think out of any inductions I do, they're the most engaging sessions where I'm given half hour and we're still talking 45 minutes later. So I think they are getting a lot out of those sessions and the feedback has been really good. With regard to the health and fitness advisors, you can see what they've been doing. There's a lot going on there. They've been collaborating a lot with colleges. So they've been giving information really on what is required for people who are looking to come into the fire service from a fitness perspective. They do work out with the watches. They do fire fit days. They go along to the public events as in the 999 days. They've all been well received. And I attend the physical and practical days with them. And it's quite interesting sometimes to see people come along not realising how fit they need to be for the role. So I think these days have been quite useful in just giving people insight into the demands of the role, giving them insight into the bleep test we do at the at the physical and practical day. So all the work they're doing is actually, being quite proactive, ensuring people are ready when they are coming for these physical and practical days. They know what to expect, because in the past there have been people turning up not even realising that they're about to do a bleep test. So I think it's just preparing people for the role, and actually it's getting people excited about the role because some people didn't realise maybe what is needed, or people who are keen on fitness don't realise that a job like firefighter might suit them. Also, just what I missed there on point 9 was the framework for post-critical incident support. We have now got a review group with regards to post-critical incidents. So Dr. Tracy Vick, our psychotherapist, comes into that. We have people from People Services, Occupational Health. We're looking at our support post-incident at the moment. It's still, we still have regular reviews. But actually, I attended a station recently to say, what do you feel you need post-incident? One of the things they said was just education on what's normal reactions post-incident, when to refer. Managers wanted reassurance that they could contact Occ Health for advice on how to manage a situation post-incident. But also they did mention that they quite enjoyed, I worked on station for the morning, they quite enjoyed that I was there, that they could come in and have a little chat if they wanted to. They felt it would be beneficial to have something like a counsellor goes out to do work on resilience, coping strategies on station, and then they feel that people would be more approachable if they see him about on station. So I'm providing that feedback in our Your Health group later this afternoon. With regards to strategic development, we have acquired a patient management system. It is in the early stages at the moment of the project. It is likely to be live in October, November time. It'd be great because it'll streamline our clinical and administrative procedures. It'd be quick access to records. At the moment, we just use SharePoint on the computer, which can be quite clunky. Individuals, employees will be able to have an app on their phone. They'll be able to make their own appointments. They'll be able to have their reports as soon as a clinician has done a report. At the moment, we wait for the administrative team to send that off to them. As soon as we've done a report as a clinician, it will be pinged to People Services, the manager and the individual. It's just going to make a lot more of our processes more efficient, I suppose. And also we'll be able to link our lung function machines, our hearing test machines to these, the new software. And I was chatting to somebody yesterday, and they said that will give us more trends. So if we're looking at audiometry for firefighters or the driving instructors, we'll be able to have a look at any trends in the hearing tests from that software. So I think that covers anything, but obviously if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I'm waiting for you to go first, Chair.
Okay. Oh, it means you're going second then, is it?
No. I'll see if there's any questions first.
Thank you for the report. Just a couple of, I did mention it to Dr. Griffiths. On page 120, the investigation recruitment services, we've been doing this for a quarter of a century.
Mm.
And we spent 14,000 this year, 18,000. Intuitively, it sounds like a really, really good thing. And I'd ask, is there any chance we can get some sort of measurement of what we've actually saved in terms of efficiency from this? Because if we've got someone who's been returned to the workplace 15 months or 2 years earlier than they would have been, we've now got them back as an employee and they're not sick. So there's an efficiency there, isn't there? Because if they're off sick, we're paying them for off sick. We've got that added to the establishment because we've got a percentage of establishment people. So there must have been something in the business case, and I bet we haven't got it, in 2001, which said, if we do this, we will save X amount of money by invest to save. So it would just be too useful to understand, because I think it's a potentially really good news story there for us in terms of effectiveness and efficiency for money. That this is and continues to be a worthwhile service to do. But if we haven't evaluated that, we've had it going for a quarter of a century, and we don't know whether it's effective.
That's why the medical fund review was implemented in the November.
Right.
We're actually doing the cost benefit analysis of
Good. So
how much time do we anticipate saving, etc.
because it would appear quite a lot. The other bit, I would sort of slightly have a different view, just like you said about on the page 124 about in-house counselling appointments. So you compare it with the NHS.
Yeah.
The NHS are looking at a much wider group of people, from very, very young children to very, very old people. We've just got people at working age for whom this is an in-house part of their offering. I think if we compare it with other fire services rather than the NHS, which is a different kettle of fish, I think we would then get an understanding of, because we've got something like 20% of people either unable to attend or did not attend. And that's 1/5 is quite an inefficiency. Now, I understand there are lots of reasons for it, but we would want to try and reduce that. And to understand whether we are good would be to compare ourselves with Mid and West and North.
I don't believe they have a counselling service.
If we look
What
at some
I've been
of the data, there might be Hereford and Worcester.
Yeah.
Something like, just to get an understanding as to percentage-wise whether we're good or not.
I think just on that point, Chair, often they offer it as like the Viva employee assistance program, so they wouldn't necessarily have that information
Right.
because it's outsourced by only AP.
All right. There might be some that are similar to us.
Yeah,
Then
have a look.
we can have a look just to understand whether we're good or, if we're at 20% and that's really, really high, then we're doing well. If it's at 20% and everyone else is at 8%, then we know there's something different here. Because we've got people of working age that we're talking about generally, who hopefully want to come back to work. Okay, right. Anything else? Right, over to you, Brian.
No, mine was just the observation. I mean, I've benefited from resources and Arc Health, and it's just the little things like, I don't know what the NHS waiting list is for an MRI scan, but a lot of our injuries are muscular and skeletal, and just having access to an early MRI scan can expedite you getting back into work once you've done the recovery, and probably save someone got on the sick for 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, great.
An
And also-
MRI scan at the moment is about 4 months, it used to be 8 weeks. So the MRI scans I think more people on the NHS are acquiring MRI scans. So at the moment it's about 4 months. So like you said, generally with the physiotherapist, we would never put an MRI scan request through without the physiotherapist saying first, because they're the experts and if they really think it's needed. But speaking to somebody recently, yeah, they were about a 4-month wait for an MRI scan, which I think Spire at the moment is about 2 to 3 weeks.
I mean, the thing with MRI scans, wearing another hat, is that when you get defensive medicine, everyone gets sent for a scan. So we'll just check just in case, just in case. That means there's a huge usage of scanners and scanning, and then not all scanners are the same. So you've got people that work on one scanner can't work on another. And that's where there's a role for AI, because AI can interpret scans much faster than human. But that's a whole other thing. So yeah, scans, if you're getting someone within a couple of weeks, as opposed to for a month, then there must be an efficiency. Anything else?
Thank you.
No, good, right. Item 14, forward work programme. Anyone got any comments or ups on that? Brian? No, thank you. Any item of business? No, I haven't. Any item to roll back to the board of commissioners? I guess it's got to be item 7, isn't it? It's got to go to the board, isn't it? The strategic policy plan. Yes, that'll have to go. Reflections on the meeting. Something I'd like to do, Scott, going forward. For this committee, probably the other group is an attendance sheet. At the front, it's like who's supposed to be here. Because on the terms of reference, I'm quick. It doesn't say who's supposed to be. We didn't say who's.
A lot of the time, the author of the report or the sponsor of the report will be different to who's in the room because of calendars and.
There is on the terms of reference, there is a set number of people who are supposed to be here.
Okay,
So
oh, right, yeah,
let's
yeah.
just have a look and we can see the attendance thing. So whether, and after we reflect on it, do they need to be here? Because if they're not being here and they're on the list, are they on the list?
Yeah,
Right.
sorry, just on that forward work programme, can I suggest we add the recruitment update in the September? Not that I want to write another paper. But the 26th of September, can I suggest we add that recruitment update? Recruitment form update.
Okay. Right, that's. Yeah. So we've got this thing about reflections in the meeting. So I've got some reflections, but clearly other people have reflections. So look around the room for reflections on. This is about how was the meeting conducted? What was the agenda like? Did people get airtime to discuss the points? Was there fair stuff? Was there robust challenge done in a fair and equitable way? Those sorts of things. What are people's views on how the meeting was done? Was it chaired great or crap, or how? What's yours? Brian, over to you. You start, Brian.
You're bullying me, Chair.
You're a member
The
of
kindred spirits.
Yeah, you're a significant member of the.
No, I think yes to all the phrases you put out there. Fair opportunity. I think you covered some of it off on as we went through paper by paper. Probably what you want is the headlines in 2 pages and everything else in appendice, because you can draw people into the appendice through the headlines. So if you want to do a deeper dive, so I think the challenges for us as report writers or those reading the reports before sort of Neil or Roger or Wayne comes in here just to say, great, just put that in the appendice, say first 2 pages, tell the panel, tell the commissioner, the chair, what they need to know within 2 pages, and pop everything else in the appendice. So I think it's smarten that up so we're more effective with our time, and it's easier read then. That's one observation. But no, as usual, I'm not just saying that you know, in terms of stewardship and the chairing the group, very good. Thank you.
Anyone else?
No, I've enjoyed it. It's good learning for me. Every day's a school day, so I've learned today, which is a plus.
Good.
I just second what Brian said about the report structure, and I know there's work being undertaken to try and make these a little bit easier to read.
So you might be watching coming and have a view about how it's structured. I mean, just a couple of things for me would be that we, in terms of people's development, so some of the report authors who came to the original meeting, but people want to be on the pioneer program, then they can have a series of second chairs put on the table, sitting back, where they can observe to see what's happening, because you don't want to be coming to this meeting for the first time cold. It's part of your own development. You would want to have understood what is going to happen at a committee meeting. What are you going to be asked? What is the nature of what's being done? I think there's a thing about preparing reports that have issues around data around performance rather than the narrative and rather than pictures. Picture paints 1,000 words, videos even better, but we want data. We want things to performance manage people by. And that tends to be how much did it cost? When's it going to be done by? Did it work? What's
The return of investment.
yeah, evaluations, reviews. We also want reports which are balanced. This was really, really good. This was really. I know it's a difficult one to do, but that's what we want. And the more we do it, it goes back to you talked about. You did reference in the report, but not very much. The visit to the Red Arrows was about just culture. It's about debriefing, wasn't it? And they have a really strong debrief ethic that it's deemed to be a really positive thing. If you can get out everything that you got wrong first before anyone else identifies it, because that means you're much more self-aware. And I guess when you're flying at 500 miles an hour, 10 foot from someone, you want that person to know that they made a mistake. No, I didn't see that. So here, and it's a thing about debrief in general, operational debrief, you want to extract the learning. It's not about blame. It is about responsibility and accountability, but it's not always about blame. So I think it's making sure that we have balanced reports that enable fair scrutiny. Otherwise, we're asking stuff which isn't in the report, but we want there. So setting out the requirement to put balanced narratives in with data. And if you say you're going to do something, you always want to know when.
Deadline.
Is that fair?
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think people that write, because people that write reports on behalf of senior people, and senior people sign it off, but that author needs to know what happened to that report, don't they? They need to know whether that was the right. Just sampling it. I don't mind more people in. Not so many more people at the table, but more people in who it's part of their own development.
I think that's a really good idea.
I was going to put my hand up now. These are recorded as well. So, for example, a lot of my team will watch these just in terms of we'll want to know what's going on, and they'll for my team based on I think it's the finance audit committee with this was said and give you some more information. So a lot of people do watch these as a matter of good practice, but I think for a lot of the certainly aspiring leaders, I think that these are all on YouTube on the website. They're all on YouTube.
There's nothing quite like being in the room.
No, I agree with that. But in addition to
you can read what's not been said.
It's a challenge.
You're in it. You can watch people's body language.
Yeah.
You just learn so much from that. I think having, Roger said you really enjoyed it. Probably a future strategic leader, but corporate uniforms, future strategic leader should be sitting periphery watching.
It's how you put the message up to your compatriots, about saying actually you want to go to some of these committees if they're interested in development, because the next time they do it, they need to understand how to write a report, how to present it, what is going to be asked, and that scrutiny is a relatively safe space. Relatively, obviously, you put under the microscope, but in the end, it's with a view to coming up with what's the best thing we can do in identifying the information that enables the organisation to perform better next time.
Yeah, and I think you raise a valid point about it's about honesty and transparency and accountability. It's not if we've got nothing's going to be perfect. So if there are issues that need to be flagged up, whether it be a lack of performance or lack of data, then it needs to go in the report, doesn't it? Because if I reflect back to my temporary promotion to ACFO, and it was a massive change, wasn't it? And we were set in this environment, and there were strategic reports were coming in before we, got the grips with the, the new governance and all that. And you would think we've just had a KC come in and tell us everything that was wrong with service. But if you actually read the reports that were presented, you think it was a perfectly well-run service. It bear no correlation to the reality of what was going on in terms of the external KC reports. So yeah, there is something in that.
And it goes to operational performance in the fireground as well, because firefighting was fantastic. And if it was, that's definitely a debriefing that's been said. So if it was, then it should be demonstrable. And not everything goes. I mean, in my time in charge of firegrounds, I can't think of an incident I went to which I wouldn't do it slightly different, more different again if I wasn't. There's always something you can do better. So I think that's the thing that we need to inculcate in general. Okay, that's me done. Right, thank you online.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you all. Mitch, I think I'm gonna come in with Dean later, for convince me it's my calendar screen now, is that okay, or just what?
Yeah, so that's fine. We'll do it